Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Startup Junkies Podcast. First of all, we'd like to thank you for tuning in, listening, watching, however you're consuming this great content. We thank you for it. If you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. If you are listening on wherever you get your podcasts, go ahead and subscribe and like there. Leave us a review. We appreciate you for being a part of our Startup Junkie Podcast community. My name is Caleb. I'm the Director of Marketing and Events at Startup Junkie. I'm joined by my co-host, Jeff Amerine, founder and Managing Director of Startup Junkie, and Matthew Ward, our NBA intern extraordinaire.
Hey.
And we are excited to be joined today by two guests. We have Dwain Hebda and Kelli Reep. Dwain is the founder of Mule Wordsmiths. Kelli is the founder of Flywrite Communications. Both are great examples of successful freelancers and solopreneurs here in the great state of Arkansas, and we're excited to have them on to talk about their journey through solopreneurship. Hopefully it shed some advice for some of those out there listening that are freelancers or interested in doing their own thing solo. So thank y'all for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
All right, I guess we'll start off by throwing this question to both of y'all, whoever wants it first. What prompted y'all to go your own way as, I guess, first freelancers and then solopreneurs? Now, I guess tell us what y'all do too. Yeah, that would be great.
Hit it, Dwain.
Well, Mule is an editorial services company. We provide all manner of written communications, from articles for magazines and newspapers to corporate communications such as press releases. We write speeches, we do blog posts, web content, that sort of thing. It officially incorporated in 2017. It's actually been around since about 2009 when I started assembling clients toward one day becoming its own standalone business. The inspiration for wanting to do that, I have a journalism background that goes all the way back to my childhood. My father was a small business owner, happened to own the weekly newspaper in my hometown growing up. And so when other kids were after school, either going to work on the farm for their parents or into a shop for their parents, I reported to the newspaper. And I've always been around it, always loved it, and finally just made the decision that's where my heart lie, and that's where my passion lie. And that all came together with Mule.
And I started Flywrite in 2003. I lost my mind for a little bit and became a pilot. And when I decided that, air conditioning was really kind of where it was at, I went back into writing and public relations. And my brother helped me come up with the name Flywrite, from Straighten Up and Flywrite. And so I had that for, I guess, until 2017. And then the way Dwain and I met, I was working for the Arkansas State Fair as a reporter. I was reporting on the winners of the pageants and talents and the livestock competitions. And so they needed someone who could work both day side, which was all the livestock competitions, and then night side, which was pageant and talent. And so Dwain and I split that up, and we've been working with them ever since.
So question for both of you. Are you truly solopreneurs, or do you have these kind of loose affiliations with other gig economy contractors that you bring into the work you do?
Kelli, why don't you take this one first?
I was completely solo from 2003 to 2017, and then I went to work full-time for Methodist Family Health. And ever since, I've just been helping Dwain with the fair and those types of things. Now, the team that I have that I work with at Methodist Family Health is all entrepreneurs. So we don't have a particular agency. I scoured and made up our own team, and they don't work for us, but they consult with us. So ever since, my heart has been with entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and in the case of Mule, that has always been a solopreneur. I am an independent contractor with the publications that I write for in the classic freelancer sense. That's a combination of pitching stories as well as some that I've written for long enough that they assign stories now. And then the corporate work is also done on a contract basis, so project by project, either what you can sell or the existing relationships that you have that they now. As projects become more complex, I can see in the future where different affiliations will be necessary just to bring a breadth of experience to a given project, experience that I may not have or may not be as versed in. But for right now, it is truly a one-person operation.
Dwain, talk about the name. So I mean, explain where Mule came from.
Sure, absolutely. So when I incorporated and I wanted to come up with a company name, I wanted something that was different, that was easily called to mind, that lent itself to a graphic such as a logo. And I didn't want it to include my name because my parents have a sick sense of humor, and they gave me a spelling of my name that I've only seen in the wild, 3 times in my entire life. So I came up with things that were somewhat had an inside story to it. Mule came from when all 4 of my children, who are all very close in age, were very small, and trying to get them out the door in a timely manner and an organized way to get to school was like herding cats. So I borrowed a phrase back then from Yosemite Sam about, get out the door, come on, hurry up, Mule, let's go. And it came to signify, get your stuff together, move forward, let's get this done. And so my children, when I was, who were then grown by the time I was incorporating, I gave them the various dad-isms, and they unanimously picked that one. And it's funny how effective that has been, because people remember that. People call it to mind. It doesn't directly say what I do, which is why we added the wordsmiths part onto the end of it. But then, Monster doesn't say anything about jobs, and Google doesn't say anything about internet either. So, there is a method to the madness, I guess you could say. But that's how that name came about, and it's been very successful. People remember it when they hear it.
And
Yeah,
I think
I was going to say, occasionally the name, our name is memorable, and I've got a similar kind of story about how we came up with it, and it was not as well thought out as yours by any means, but we still do occasionally get the random person that thinks that we're a group that helps junkies get started. You have to convince them that no, that's not really the focus.
Right.
I had somebody approach me at an event year before last. It was shortly after I started here. It was a public event we had at the ballpark, and she was interested, as an elderly lady, interested in whether or not we were, I guess, junkers, people that go through and look for antiques. She was disappointed when I told her we were not. Dwain, I like what you said about, in regards to Mule kind of calling to mind, like, let's get this done, let's get after it. And I think that's indicative of, being a solopreneur, because the ball's always in your court in terms of getting stuff done and staying on top of the business. Tell me a little bit about that, both of you, just kind of what it takes, kind of drive you have to, I guess, be the master of your own success.
Well, I think that's a really good question. And the thing that I always tell people, whether there's somebody just getting started or it's a young person that at some point might want to write for a living, or they're going into a different line of work, is that you really need to get an early and firm grasp on the skills that you have to have. And that number one skill is you're a salesperson, okay? And if you talk to 99 out of 100 writers, they're going to say, no, I have no sales skills and I don't do that. In fact, that's why I went into writing, because I didn't want to be on the advertising side of a newspaper, for instance. You know, they're the salespeople, I'm the writer, I'm the word person. Well, that all goes out the window when you're a solo practitioner, okay? If you can't sell, and in this case, sell yourself, people are not just lining up outside your door because you announce to the world that you can put a sentence together. It doesn't work that way. You absolutely have to know how what you do advances the cause of the people you want to do it for, whether that's an editor or whether that's a business person. Because the fact of the matter is, in this particular line of work, and I think Kelli will back me up on this, everybody writes to some degree every day, particularly with the advent of and growth of email. People write every day, but it's not writing, okay? It's not
Or
the same.
communicating.
Or communicating, exactly.
Yeah.
But because they're doing it every day, they think, well, if I just had another hour in the day, I could knock this out and I could save some money. You have to be able to build a compelling case as to why you are going to be an expense for them that month. You have to be able to demonstrate how this is going to pay off, and you have to demonstrate how you taking it off their hands actually saves them money, because time is money, etc. So I think that's the number one thing that trips people up. And if you don't know that coming in, you either wake up to it real quick and embrace it, or, you know, don't quit your day job, because you just can't survive it.
Yeah. For me, just get used to working hard and working all the time. When I started, I didn't say no to anything. And the main reason was I wanted to network and meet as many people as possible and showcase what I could do. Now that will tire you out really quick, but you know, if you're trying to build a business, get as much breadth of experience as you can. And so I was pegged on every volunteer committee and, you know, can you help us with this? Can you help us with that? And if the news media called and said, hey, we had a cancellation, could you fill in? Yes, I can. You know, what is it? Figure out how to make a nuclear bomb. Okay, I'll Google that. You know, just whatever it took, but you just never say no. And it pays off, because then people call you. And that's ultimately what you want. So you want to get used to working hard, working all the time. Don't think that you're going to work 9 to 5, because you're not. You're going to work all the time. And then be open to learning all kinds of different things. The sales part, I would say, is equal to being willing to work hard.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, and again, Kelli, I think you would agree with me on this. One thing that I run into a lot when someone is envisioning going out on their own, they say, well, you know, I've always had a passion for travel, therefore I'm going to be a good travel writer, and you may very well be. But the road to being a travel writer is paved with an awful lot of press releases talking about, you know, a brand new sandwich shop opening up, okay? Because that's just the way the business works.
That's right.
You have to be subject agnostic but informed. You have to be able to write something where maybe you don't have your name on it. I've had editors almost apologize, saying, well, this doesn't carry a byline, your name's not on it. And I basically say, if my name's on the check, that's great, okay? Because that's what it's all about when you're relying on this profession,
right.
Not as a hobby, not as a vanity thing, but as a way to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you have to be willing to write stuff that in some cases you may not have an interest in, or it may not excite you that much, but the idea that it's advancing your business, that's what should excite you.
That's right.
I think something that really caught my ear was the idea of selling and how that transpires in different areas of life, whether it's you trying to find a spouse or being able to bring a client on or trying to get more eyeballs with your marketing initiatives. I feel like that's a really important idea. And something that I think is closely related to that is storytelling. I have more of a finance background, but I'd be curious to hear y'all's perspective on how to tell a good story to attract clients and audience, et cetera.
Kelli, you first.
Yeah, storytelling, the ability to find what is common that everybody will be able to kind of connect with is a unique talent. And if you're a writer, the more that you do that, the better you hone that storytelling skill. If you can, take, like, for instance, agriculture is not for everybody, right? So I was asked to interview an aerial applicator, and for those that don't know, that is a crop duster. The term is now aerial applicator, for Rice Farmer magazine, and I did that, and it was fascinating. I learned a lot. And then I was asked to speak to the Diamond State romance authors of Arkansas, which was part of the Romance Writers of America. And I thought, what am I going to talk to them about? I have no idea. So I went and I spoke with them, and they said, well, what are some of the things that you write? And so I told them, well, I've been published in Rice Farmer magazine, and I know what y'all are thinking, and there is not one handsome rice farmer that could be, the hero in your stories. And they laughed. No, that's not true. I mean, I'm sure there's tons of handsome rice farmers out there, but you would never think that connection would make it. But to be able to connect those two, and they go, oh, okay, sense of humor, and yeah, how do I, because they face the same things. And so being able to, mold the story to a specific audience is, it's a skill that you'll learn. It's innate, but you can also learn it.
I would also say that just like any other service business, storytelling is something that can be crafted with the help of the client. Okay, and in some cases, clients don't really know how to see a particular story except from one angle. And so you come in there and you stir the pot a little bit. Let's use the finance example that you presented. Okay, if I'm writing this for a group of investors, it's going to be heavier on the data. It's going to be heavier on performance, say, of a given fund or of an investment opportunity. But there are also outlets where they don't really care how it works. They care how it impacts them. Mm-hmm. So if you're writing about a given, let's say, a financial company within a business magazine, that's a general interest business magazine, the story becomes much different. The story might become that the founder, grew up without running water and worked these very low-paying jobs while he or she was putting themselves through school, and that shaped their investment philosophy. So you get back around to the what I'll call the backbone of the story and what you want to get across.
The human part of it.
Exactly, because I may not be able to relate to the number end of it as the reader, but I can really relate to the human part of it. And so sometimes if you're really fortunate, and if you've been doing it for a while and you have the trust of a given publication, you start to fall into what they're looking for out of that storytelling. In other cases, you have to ask the client, particularly if you're doing corporate writing, all right, what are we really trying to get across here? Give me 2 or 3 of the most important takeaways that you want the reader to come away with, and then we build from there. So it's different than news writing, where you're looking for, this is what happened, this is what's not in dispute. Okay. When you're doing the type of writing like what I'm talking about, you do have some flexibility and some latitude, and that starts with, well, what are you trying to say and who are you trying to say it to? And you go from there.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I've got one for you. It's just a point of curiosity, and I guess it's a function of a lot of time on earth in my case, but it seems like the state of language has been simplified. It's not as complex and rich as it was. Some of the stuff I read when I was younger, or when you read the classics, you all are experts in the field. How would you sort of rate the state of how we communicate in language in general, in a world that's dominated by a 24-hour news cycle and 140 character, communications?
Well, at the risk of living up to this gray beard of mine, I do have to say that it's very concerning when you circulate among the younger populations, not only in their casual way of communicating, and I shouldn't say younger populations, I should say the succeeding generations. But not only how they communicate casually among themselves, where you can say, hey, look, you can cut them some slack on that. But I mean, even people who are professionals in jobs that should know better. I recently was asked to judge a journalism contest that was made up of college age individuals who were writing for their college newspaper, and it was appalling. There's just really no other word about it, and I do worry about that. I do think that something is lost culturally. I think something is lost as a civilization when we cannot communicate, and particularly as we've seen here in the past couple of years, when you're dealing with a subject matter that requires some tact or requires the ability to fully articulate what you think or how you believe in something, that's when a conversation degenerates into just name calling, because it's the easiest thing you can do. And when you only have however many characters, then you want to cut to the punchline, which is not, well, I disagree with you, and here's why, but, well, you're just an idiot. And I think there's been a coarsening of society as a result of that, and certainly the divisiveness that we've seen on the national stage, I think draws a direct, hard line to our inability to communicate adequately.
I think brevity is still the soul of wit, and I think you can be a great writer with few words than with a lot. But with all of that being said, I'm also 52, so take that take that as it may. I think some of the writing on TV shows now is better than at any other time in the history, like Breaking Bad and Mad Men. That to me is just pure art, the way that they've done that. But then, on the opposite end, you have The Bachelor, and so I think it's same as it ever was. There are just things that I think past generations faced the exact same thing that you were posing, Jeff, in just different ways. So.
Thank you. Good insights.
And we do, we get clients come through, had one not too long ago, and I actually engaged with Dwain about this at the time. Folks that want to kind of pave their own path and go down that solo entrepreneur freelancer path, and I know, and trying to give them some advice, there are various things in regards to, how to form legally, or your LLC, how are you filing with Secretary of State. And Dwain, you had some good advice for me then, and I was hoping you might be able to shed some light now, just as far as general advice for somebody that's going down that path, rather than just, write checks to cash and take it as you get it.
Yeah, absolutely. So no matter how small you are, and you can't get a whole lot smaller than, one person operation, you really do need a couple of members of your team who are versed in something you're not versed in. Okay. And in my particular case, the best hire I ever made, the best money I spend year in and year out, is an experienced accountant who could guide me through a number of different things early on. Number one, how to incorporate. We happen to be an S corp. There are other options that appeal and fit other entities better than mine, and mine just happens to fit me better than the other ones. I would not have known that had I not had that sort of advice and guidance. The same goes for things like expense reporting or the accounting part of it, how you don't commingle your funds, right? I mean, the business funds have to stay separate, and there's a way that you can use those funds to either pay yourself or pay bills, but how you track that and how you keep track of all that is enormously important. It gets you into, if you don't do it, it gets you into a lot of trouble really quick, and that is very, very expensive. And I've been able to avoid a lot of that, not because I was that bright, but because I was smart enough to hire that sort of expertise. To this point, we haven't had to look into other professionals, for instance, and a staff attorney or somebody that, you know, we have on retainer that we have to deal with legal issues just because of our size and because, you know, we're not in a position where that's quite as important. But if the business were to continue, I mean, I would follow the same thing. That's one of the dangers of being in our do-it-yourself and save a buck society. You can go online and maybe you can do this yourself, or you can do your taxes yourself. Again, I apply the same philosophy to those services as I do for the services I provide to my clients. Yeah, but at what cost in time and at what cost in potential errors? Let's just pay somebody and have somebody who knows what they're doing handling those things. So that was an early piece of advice I got. I followed it, and I've never looked back.
Yeah, I filed as an S corp as well, and Dwain and I have different issues, but they were both, S corp was the right fit for both of us, but in different ways. So you can file as an LLC, you can file as a sole proprietor. It would behoove you to talk with an accountant and tell them what your situation is and get that ironed out on the front end, and then pay your taxes, because Uncle Sam is going to be first. Just always pay your taxes.
Would you, follow on to that, would you say that given what you do and the fact that you're writing and there's sort of public interest a lot of times and public visibility into it, in addition to general liability insurance, do you carry like errors and omissions just for additional protection? If you happen to put something in there that was factually incorrect, is that something that you have to worry about?
Kelli, you go first.
I didn't while I had Flywrite. The main reason why, anything that I wrote for someone, I had them review it and approve it first. So what I did was I would not consider, in fact, I would tell people that I would interview, this is not a 60 minutes interview. I'm not here to, do gotcha or anything like that. So I would take a first draft, I would send it to them and say, I just want to make sure that this is correct. And they would have the opportunity to correct, but not change the story necessarily. And so I would say, I want you to know about it, so when it's printed, you don't have any surprises. So I never got any of that kind of insurance. Now, knock wood, in that 14-year time period, I never had any problems. So I think it is up to you and what you feel would work best for you. Like if I was a freelance journalist, I probably would want that. As a freelance public relations and marketing practitioner, it really didn't apply to me specifically.
Got it.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that because I agree with everything Kelli just said. Again, it goes back to the type of thing you're doing. If I was a crime reporter or I was somebody
Exactly.
who was doing exposés or investigative work, I mean, absolutely. And chances are, again, most of the people I know who do that are affiliated with a given publication that already carries that for them. but if I were in that sort of writing, it'd be different. People generally don't get too upset with a lot of the things that I do, because I've been fortunate that in the majority of the magazine and newspaper articles I've done, it's been positive news. See stuff going on in your town, and it generally doesn't tick people off to read that sort of thing. So I haven't found it to be necessary at this point. And but if the subject matter were to change dramatically, then yeah, I would definitely.
I would say for writers such as Mara Leverett or, global scale Ronan Farrow, it would apply, because, Mara did the Boys on the Tracks, and then Ronan did Catch and Kill, where it's, a lot of he said, she said, that kind of thing. That's not what Dwain and I do.
Sure.
That's a different. So I would think for them that would be a good thing. For us, writing about the county pageant winner and just saying here she won, that kind of thing, yeah, we're usually okay.
And by the way, I would also add to that list, Kelli, humor writers. I don't know how anybody who deals in satire or humor or does stand-up to kind of veer off of what we do. I don't know how those people survive in this day and age. But yeah, if you thought you were funny or you were going to poke fun at somebody or do some sort of satirical writing, yeah, you better lock yourself up.
Yeah. In a world where people are perpetually offended about something, I would imagine that would be tough.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I know y'all touched on it a little bit, but if you could elaborate more so on, if somebody were to come to you interested in maybe quitting that day job or focusing more, they want to spin off and go that direction, what advice might y'all give them before they made that leap?
Kelli, you first.
I would have some money saved for sure. And don't be afraid to take a part-time job if you need it. If this is something that you really want to pursue, which is something that I really did, you can make it work. And also get creative with how you pay things. If I have a particularly good month, I would pay ahead on bills, knowing that a few months down the road, I might not, have the same amount. So I would just say, be very honest with yourself on what you can and can't live without, and what you can and what you're willing to accept as far as work and what you're willing not to accept as far as work. And then the rest is just, hard work and diligence, just like anything else. And you can do it.
I think if someone were to sit across the table from me and ask me that very question, I think the first thing out of my mouth is, why do you want to do this? Are you doing it just because you can't stand what you're doing now? Are you doing it because you really feel like you have a background in some way? Maybe you were the child of entrepreneurs, so you saw that example growing up to where you learned that work ethic and you learned what the life of an entrepreneur or a small business person actually looks like at times. I would also caution you against quitting a day job, for instance, based on one opportunity. Okay. The reason I said that Mule started in 2009 was because I was with a company that I could see the writing on the wall. This company wasn't going to be around forever, and I wasn't going to be part of its plan. So I started building that clientele then. And over time, by the time I got to being ready to be pushed out of the nest, I had a reasonable idea of what was going to be coming in every month, because I built that relationship. I was in that mode where they were going to use me for X amount of business every month, and I could build from there. But had I jumped out on my own based on the first magazine article that I landed, I'd have been hungry really, really quick, and it just wouldn't have worked. So while there's never a perfect time, you're never going to have perfect conditions, and it's always going to have a safety net. Otherwise, people would do it all the time, right? You're never going to have that necessarily. There's always risk, but just like in investment or in insurance or what have you, you can mitigate that risk. You can appreciate where your weak spots are, where you need to shore up in terms of adding clients or networking more or sharpening that sales pitch of yours. Give yourself time to really have a good picture of how the market rises and falls. Okay. I learned, for instance, that the first quarter of the year is not a good time to sign new clients because that's just the way it works. But in the meat of the year, that's when the earning and where people are a little more open to that for whatever reason. If I hadn't learned that ahead of time, like I said, I would jump on that first magazine article. You're not gonna pay your bills. So don't get in a hurry, no matter how badly you want to do this. Make sure you have at least enough data to make a reasonable assumption about how your year is going to play out. Fill in the blanks after that.
One of the deciding factors for me to go out on my own was my parents were older and one was in failing health at the time. And so I wanted to be available so I could care for her. And then after she passed, my father subsequently got into failing health, and I wanted to be there for him. And then when he passed, shortly after, I got an opportunity to go to work for Methodist and took it. So it all sort of worked out, seamlessly. But that was one of my decisions to go out on my own, because I knew working, in a regular job, I will say, you work 9 to 5 and you have to get your work done then. Well, for me, if I'm in the hospital with my folks, I can't do that kind of work. So I was able to take a laptop, my cell phone, and work from the hospital room, get things done when people were there during work hours, and then other work I would do afterwards. So for me, it was more of a lifestyle kind of solution than it was a burning desire to have my own business. Now, I'm proud that I did that. I'm proud that I've lived to tell about it. But there are all kinds of reasons that someone might want to go out on their own.
I would add one more thing, and it kind of goes back to the old cliche: if you do what you love, you don't work a day in your life.
Exactly.
If you're feeling how many hours you're putting in, then this may not be what you're doing, right? I felt so committed and so passionate about what I wanted to do and what I wanted Yeah Mule to ultimately become, that I don't really think about how many hours it takes. Yeah, every so often you kind of think, man, I wish I could just take a weekend and not have to even think about work. And that happens occasionally. You get fatigued and what have you. But if really you're waking up saying, man, I gotta go back to that grind that has become my job, then you need to take a hard look at it may not be for you, or some aspect of it may not be for you, and then you need to figure out a way to mitigate that. Either delegate or take on somebody who can handle that part for you or something. But if it's truly a good fit, it should just feel as natural as falling down a flight of stairs.
Caleb, I think this is the point where you.
I was waiting for somebody else to ask a question before I did. So one of the last questions we ask our guests is, if you had the opportunity to roll back the clock, knowing what you know now, go back in time when you started your journey, what advice might you give your younger self with the value of the knowledge you have now?
Ooh. I would honestly, I would have entered this venture more boldly, with comfortable in the knowledge that even though you're from a small town and you didn't have the benefit of that some other people did, whether it was an education in journalism or a particular school they came from or whatever the case may be, that you knew that you could do it, you knew that you could compete, and I think that I talked myself out of some opportunities because of almost an inferiority complex at times, and and that includes asking for the sale. I had to learn how to be a salesman too, and that takes a certain boldness, and that takes a certain amount of communicative skill to do that, and not come off like you're bragging or you're some other sort of message is being communicated than what you want. And I think I would have had more confidence, and I would have said, hey, you got this, you can do this, and it may not pan out, but you can get in there and compete. And I think that took a little bit of time and a little bit of pitching things and learning that process, and cost me some time as a result, instead of just saying, all right, you're just like everybody else in this field, why not you? So go ahead. And for that, I have to give credit to my wife, who was, amazingly supportive. And frankly, when I say kicked out of the nest in 2017, I kind of stalled on doing this full time. And she was the one who said, this is going to happen this year. And I put her off for several months of that year, and she finally won out. And it was the greatest thing I ever did.
I agree with all of that. Just keep telling yourself there's no such thing as failure. If you've gone out on your own, you've done a huge thing. And whether it lasts a month or it lasts 14 years, you still went out and did your own thing. And that takes a lot of nerve and a lot of courage. And, to Dwain's point, don't get caught up in the, who do I think I am? But, why can't you? Just go and try it. There's no harm in it.
Anybody that's honest at some point suffers from imposter syndrome.
Absolutely. I still do. Yeah.
You just got to push through it. And
that's right.
I think that the two of you are inspirations for people who are looking to make that jump, that have got a skill, that are interested in being solo entrepreneurs, or really interested in starting anything. So thanks so much for coming on. The one final thing we always ask is, how can people contact you? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your
Sure. So like I can share an email address. By all means, that's the best way to reach out to me. And that is Dwain, spelled DWAIN, at Yamule, and that's YA-MULE.com. That's the business email. I'm happy to field any questions. I'm happy to help in any way that I can, offer whatever advice. But reach out to me at Dwain@Yamule.com.
And Jeff, I wanted to say it was very kind. Thank you for that compliment. I am old school. You can reach out to me at kdreep@hotmail.com. And it works. Just don't send me anything about warranties. I don't, the answer is no on warranties.
Perfect way to close. Thanks so much for coming on today. It's great.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate y'all.
Take care.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.